What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod. I'm Pat Sheehan with my co-host, who can't touch all 10 toes, but he'll still pod for these hoes. It's Dave Martinson. Dave, how you doing, man?
From the top, make a drop, baby. We here. What's good?
Not much, man. We have a pretty packed show today. We got lots of music, some of which we mentioned at the end of last episode. We actually did not get to because it was just such a packed weekend. We have a couple of then big watching things we watched. Fargo, Enola Holmes, both right on our TVs. But Dave, I wanted to start by giving the people what they really want, which is your quick thoughts on the New Mutants. You saw it this week. Tell me what you think.
That's right. Once again, saw it by myself in the movie theater. You truly love that private screening. Yeah, I mean, New Mutants has been in the theaters for what, over a month at this point. It's been a while, slow trickle at the box office, as anyone who has wanted to see it has long since seen it, I think, and braved the plague to go to see it in the theater. So notable, not a disaster. It's fine. It's not good or great, but it's not like offensively bad either, which I think, given the incredibly troubled development and long path to the screen, that was something many had expected. It's not quite like that. Honestly, I'm more disappointed in Dark Phoenix, having seen both now. Just because I think Dark Phoenix had a lot more riding on it, especially when Fox was still its own entity. And ultimately, I just walking away from New Mutants, the last X-Men entry from Fox, it just kind of sucks that Fox is no longer in the game when it comes to like superhero movies, because they would take these swings, right? You have New Mutants, which is essentially like a dark, like Breakfast Club take on X-Men. No costumes, it's a much smaller scale thing. They made Deadpool, they made Logan. They would try things again to varying degrees of success, as New Mutants suggests, but at least they attempted something out there, right? Mm-hmm. Under Marvel, whatever version of the X-Men we get down the line, that's going to be like this. So it's really up to DC to be weird with it, right? And we'll see what happens with WandaVision. Again, we have our reservations about how weird the MCU truly will get, but yeah, New Mutants, it was all right. It's kind of funny, like, listening to like Josh Boone talk about finally finishing the movie and all the stories and stuff, and the meta nature of the film was really way more interesting than the movie itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a movie I would go see in theaters, not a movie I would brave the elements to see at this point. I'll probably check it out when it gets to streaming, which I'm hoping is soon, since especially it's been, like you said, in development for so long. I imagine they want to just get eyes on it as soon as they can. Maybe I'll even pay like $3 for video on demand. Who knows? But I'm not super jazzed about it, and I'm actually, I think, more interested to see where just the X-Men go in general, recasting, figuring out what the next steps are going to be for them, how they play into that Marvel universe moving forward. So we'll see. Very interesting stuff. And for more of Dave's thoughts, you can follow his Twitter at Martin Swagger, or hit that subscribe button, because Dave reviews a lot of movies and television right here on Nowstalgia Pod. But he also reviews music, folks. And as you can see behind him is Joji, looking the most dad-like I've ever seen the man. Joji's actually, it's kind of funny because just in thinking about looking at that picture you have up, and then the picture on Ballads 1, and then the picture on Nectar, a man whose face seems to always be shifting and changing, and kind of like his music. And I feel like that's really what has made him such an attractive artist in a lot of ways, that Joji makes songs in a very unique way, different from most people. His production and his song structure choices are very idiosyncratic a lot of time, but they work. And I think this album was probably one of our most anticipated because of that. Ballads 1, I would say, was a certified hit for him. Songs like Slow Dancing in the Dark, Yeah, Right. Just song after song we were really impressed by. Then he drops Run, which is probably a top 10 song for me this year. And
Perfect.
Really, the expectations cannot be higher going into this album. Were you pleased with the output of Nectar?
Yeah, I was pleased. I don't know if this sets like this new super high bar for Joji as someone who took a non-traditional path to becoming a full-time musical artist. As you might expect, his music is still hard to pin down, hard to put in a box, as you were suggesting. Nectar's kind of like that too. He kind of jumps around with a lot of different stuff, right? You have Run, right, which is just a ballad, probably similar to Slow Dancing in the Dark, I guess. You have the song with Diplo. You have Gimme Love, a TikTok song that's just earworm potential. You have Your Man, the last song, which is very, very dancey, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of different stuff on here. But I think, through 2 albums and an EP, when Joji hits, he hits really well. And there's just some kind of aspect to his charisma that not a lot of other people can match for whatever reason. So I always just find him a really appealing artist because I don't know what to expect, but I know that usually I'll like it for some reason, right? And that's what Nectar did. So I was still quite pleased with this, and I think there's some moments that hit really big. I thought Modus track 2, my God, that song rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Modus was one of the standouts for me as well. And I agree. I think this album in general is a solid album, but I think for my own expectations going in, especially with a song like Run, that was really like you said, a perfect song in a lot of ways. I don't think I got the highs throughout this as I did it on Run. Modus is maybe the exception. A couple other songs that stood out to me were Sanctuary, which I think is a great ballad. Mr. Hollywood
last year as well.
Mr. Hollywood. And then what was the other one I liked? Oh, Your Man at the end, the dancey song that you mentioned. There was a lot of stuff in between though that I didn't really find, very memorable. I think was where I was kind of left with, and I think in terms of like an entire conceptualized album, it's maybe not my favorite piece of work, but I think the highs on it still are worth exploring and make Joji such an appealing artist. What song stood out to you other than Modus?
Yeah, Modus, Your Man. I also really like TikTok. I think right after Modus, track 3, I think that's a more hip hop inspired song. Rich Brian feature would have fit right in on that. That would have sounded cool. I also liked Little Yachty on Pretty Boy, as we've said recently. Less is more with Yachty. He's pretty good with the guest spots, and him and Joji together on that song actually made sense the way both their performances. I like that. I mean, I agree. It's more about moments, and when you release Run as like your second single, but your first like real lead up single to an album, you're setting a high bar for yourself, right? Yeah. So I think the best is still yet to come for him, but even if this is all we're getting left with in the meantime, I'm still pretty satisfied. He's a really interesting artist. And 88 Rising, man, we had quite the heater in the past 6 weeks between the Rich Brian EP and the Nicki album.
Yeah, I definitely am still excited to see the things Joji will do. And I think this album, if anything else, just shows that he's incredibly ambitious still. He's going to keep pushing the boundaries. And I think, like you said, whatever is ahead of him in the future is probably going to be even better. So, looking forward to hearing more from Joji in the future, but for now we'll enjoy Nectar, and a couple of songs will be on our Nowstalgia Best of 2020 playlist. But Dave, I want to give you the floor here a little bit because I put on this MGK album, Tickets to My Downfall. This is his 4th album, 5th album. I think it's his 5th at this point. He had 4 before this, and MGK, the last time we saw him was in the Motley Crue movie. And I did not watch that movie, but by all accounts it was very bad. And
yes.
But it seems like such a perfect fit for MGK, kind of this grimy guy who's like known for like hooking up with very attractive women who seem like they'd be out of his league usually, but I mean he's got that lanky appeal, similar to you, Dave.
Relax. MGK putting out Wilt Chamberlain numbers, quote tweeting pictures of him with Summer Rae Chantel Jeffries and Megan Fox. Truly one of the best things I've seen all year. And it's kind of funny, right? Like MGK, this guy who's from the gutter, from nothing, in the streets of Cleveland, made it and has gone full LA, And you're actually selling him short. We have seen him since that Motley Crue movie. He was in Big Time Adolescence with his buddy Pete Davidson.
Oh, you're right.
As his friend.
Wow. And Pete Davidson's on this album. Comes
That's
in
right.
for a little guest spot when MGK is coming down off mushrooms, which is actually a pretty funny part of this whole
It was
thing.
just genuine. You could tell it was real.
Yeah. But Dave, I didn't hate this album. I actually just felt like it was Blink 182 karaoke in a lot of senses. And
yeah, for sure.
In a lot of ways, that's inoffensive and enjoyable to listen to. The lyrics are pretty bad, but the sound, not bad, especially when you have Travis Barker on the drums. This is punk pop stupidity. So sure, I'll go with it. It's a decent listen, but you had some thoughts the other day. I want to hear you kind of just like go off on this album right now.
Yeah, I think that point is right. It is intentionally inoffensive. And it's actually on track to be his biggest album first week ever, which I think is quite notable because he never truly made major commercial inroads as a rapper. Part of that, I think, was due to his own doings. He never made a great album. I think the closest he ever got for me was his Breaking News mixtape, which is not on streaming. But he always had good technical ability, and there were always moments with that. You think of how he busts on the scene with like Wild Boy, for example. But more recently, Rap Devil, his diss song of Eminem, a great song, a really good song. And it was on an EP that sold 20,000 first week. It just didn't seem to catapult him. And that was disappointing to me because I really liked that song. I really like what he did on that. But now, if you've been an MGK fan, whether you're attracted to his cut jaw or you've been into the music so now whatever the reason, you've probably noticed that Machine Gun Kelly has been making changes to his sound, right? And you think of like a big hit for him a few years back, Camila Cabello, Bad Things, right? That is pretty much a light pop song, really no hip hop in that. Loose single, Why Are You Here? He had that song with Youngblood, was I Think I'm Okay. Like there's been these moments you're like, okay, wow, MGK's not making hip hop, but he's finding success in doing that. Last year, that song with Trippie Redd, Candy, right? Really melodic, again, more pop angled stuff. You could see this coming. And now he's finally embracing this new album, Tickets to My Downfall, as being his pop punk album. And for me, it's kind of disappointing to see for me because he was someone who had like real like street cred in hip hop and had like widespread respect in the scene. But because he never found commercial success, he felt this need to rebrand his sound and appeal to the white girls. So then again, he did not find a lot of hip hop success. So I don't blame him for this shift. And for everything he said, this is also stuff he likes, so I'm not going to hate on him for that or anything. But for me, it was just hard for me not to see the like blatant like brand realignment that was this album. But as you said, it's pretty inoffensive. And I think there are some moments on this and like My Ex's Best Friend, the single with Black Bear, that is a catchy pop song, man. That was really catchy, and yeah, the lyrics are pretty bad on this the whole time. But when you're trying to make inoffensive pop punk in particular, something that's basically non-existent in mainstream pop music, the bar is inherently low, and MGK is on a high in terms of his celebrity and people paying attention to him. So I guess it makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I think it really just depends how you're coming at this, right?
No, yeah, I completely agree. And I saw a fairly mixed reaction on Twitter last week, right? When this dropped, I saw some people saying this is a great move for MGK, that they really enjoyed this. Some people saying, oh man, MGK just, taking another hit, kind of selling out a bit. I found this to be like a fun listen. It really is. Like I said, it just like I was unable to listen to this and not think like, this is Travis Barker being like, this is how we made Blink 182 sound like this, and now you just kind of put your vocals on it. And he's got a good voice for punk rock. Like I feel like he's got that like deep kind of guttural like vocals that
Sure.
just make that punk sound kind of pop. I also really liked Forget Me Too with Halsey. And Halsey came in. At first, I thought it might have been Haley Williams. Like she comes in sounding
Sure.
so like, I don't know, like punkish. Like I also did not expect to hear Halsey on this record. I guess
Raspy voice.
exactly. And then, man, I thought Halsey was great on that song. Bloody Valentine, I thought was okay. Like it was a fine, inoffensive song. Just kind of was like, like the whole time I was like, whatever. Like good on MGK for trying something, but I don't know if this is it.
Right. Yeah, personally for me, I think Bloody Valentine's probably one of the weaker moments on this, because I don't think that song works that well. But I was actually pretty disappointed in Nothing Inside featuring Ian Dior, because MGK was featured on Ian's project back in May or June, Sick and Tired. And again, that's another one where like, oh wow, MGK actually has this ability to ride like that wavy melody laden rap that's really big right now, right? And Ian Dior is one of the biggest faces in that. Obviously, his song Mood with 24K Gold is a huge top 10 hit right now. But Nothing Inside didn't come close to those moments. I wanted more from that one, given what I was expecting going in. Similarly, All I Know with Trippy, not as good as Candy from last year. But I mean, yeah, I guess I'm happy for the guy, because this is gonna give him some more success. He did mention that he was considering leaving music if this didn't become a big hit for him, which was weird to me, right? Because like he's been signed to Bad Boy Records this whole time. He's been signed to Diddy, yet nothing really stuck, right? Except for the Camilla song, and that was always kind of weird to me. And I was always wondering, like, maybe if he just became an independent artist, where again the bar is lowered for success. You don't need to sell as much to make lots of money. I kind of thought that would be the route, but no, I think he definitely found something. He found a new lane. And as much as I hate anyone collaborating with Black Bear, I think that song is really good. So yeah, like I said, it's gonna be his biggest album to date. You can't hate on that.
Can't hate on it at all. Good for MGK getting that money, or that, at least those streams. Well, we move on though, Dave, to something that I think is much better than this, which is the Spillage Village album, Spilligion. Yeah, so Spillage Village, Atlanta hip hop group, collective, I guess we'll call it. Kind of led by Earth Gang. We have a lot of JID on this. We have what Black is on this, right? 6 Lack.
Yep, for the very same.
And a couple of other people popping in. Benji, I think, has a moment here. Chance jumps on this record. I haven't listened to the first couple of projects from Spillage Village, and in kind of like just kind of seeing what the general consensus was around this album online, I saw a lot of mixed reviews on review sites about this, because this seems to be a bit of a shift from what people expected from Spillage Village. When you have JID and Earth Gang, you kind of expect this bombastic sound where it's these crazy beats and they're just kind of going off on them. This is a lot more like an Earl record in a way, like where you're getting like jazzy, funk influenced sound. I mean, I guess Earl's a little bit more chopped and screwed than this, but it really is such a downtoned sound that I think people weren't expecting this. How are you feeling though after listening to Spilligion?
Yeah, I also had a mixed reception to it, and I think that's because of the baggage I'm going in what I expect from JID and Earth Gang, right? And Spilligion, the genesis of this album is interesting to read about. There's a lovely feature on Rolling Stone about how this came to be, and that Spillage Village collective, which has grown a little bit, but JID and Earth Gang are founding members of this for the most part. That started before any of these guys were big. They were more or less just kind of scrapping in Atlanta, right? And now they're returning to this as artists signed the Dreamville Interscope, right? And you can look; this is actually credited as a Dreamville release now. And JID had rented a house in Atlanta to work on his third album. And then once COVID happened, the plans kind of shifted, and this then became a Spillage Village recording, extended recording session, similar to those famous, heavily documented sessions that Dreamville did for the Revenge of the Dreamers 3 label album last summer. And by all accounts, most just about everyone in the group, except for Black, who was stuck in LA, were like kind of like locked down in this house during the thick of quarantine, and they were together for a few months and not even working every day, but really just kind of in the zone and being around each other. And it seems like a lot of the Dreamville people kind of like to work in this way. That's cool to hear and cool to read about. Apparently they play lots of Monopoly, and some of them are very competitive. So there's some cool stories in that feature. But it also seems like this album was shaped by the current moment we're in, right? Both not only the pandemic, but also everything that happened with George Floyd. And you can kind of hear that in the music. And I was not expecting such chorus laden, R&B laden music. Like, I know Black is part of this, but he's not a big part of this album, right? But like, to me, it just seemed like JID kind of faded in and out. He's always good. He's such a good rapper, but them and even Earth Gang, like, I was just not as in, and like, or I guess I just wasn't like expecting or looking to hear like Mariba sing all the time, right? And like, and Jerf and Brian seems like a pretty good rapper. I'm not really familiar with him, but it's tough for me to put a finger on it. But like, for me, it was more about the moments and than like the whole thing, which is interesting because it's 12 tracks, 15 minutes. They're all pretty long songs. A lot of people involved in each song, but I mean, like, there's some moments I really liked, but other times I was just kind of like, this is not hitting the way I wanted. But it's still kind of an interesting creation, and I think definitely warrants multiple listens.
Yeah, this is a album I'm excited to listen back to, and I think my lack of expectation going in actually served me really well, because I kind of came away from this album feeling like this was a really great cohesive piece of art. I thought the sound was really consistent throughout, while also kind of shifting between funk and soul and jazz, and people kind of popping in and out of the album, and delivering some great moments, but also all of it sounding like a whole, which is I think it's particularly difficult to do when you bring in like Chance the Rapper with Ari Lennox on a song that's a little bit more like it's a little choppier than a lot of the other songs on it. And I felt like that if that feature can work, I guess only someone like J. Cole like dropping in, like obviously this being a Dreamville thing, you might expect that to happen, but I'm actually glad he wasn't, because I think having these artists outside of JID and Earth Gang and Black that are kind of more up and coming, maybe not as well known, served it really well to make it feel like it was more of like a vision than like just a showcase in a sense. Give me some of those moments that worked really well for you, though. It seems like you had a few.
Yeah, I thought End of Days was a highlight that has a music video. That chorus is quite triumphant. It seems to be like just about everyone on the song singing it together. I like that one. And then Baptized. That was probably the best moment of JID and Earth Gang doing what they do.
Yeah.
And delivering on what you expect from them. I think Johnny Venus in particular was really awesome with his flow in that first verse and the chorus, that nasally sound you expect from him. So those are probably my two favorite ones, but there's also other moments too. Like, I thought Mecca was interesting. Mm-hmm. Again, similar. Yeah, just JD and Earth Gang. You have that Chance verse on Judas, getting a lot of love online. I saw that love before I listened to it. I didn't expect it to be a more understated Chance verse. I was like, oh, they're like Chance to Spin. I was like, oh, what is this, reboot? Is this like just banger Chance? It's not banger Chance. It's a little different. That's okay though. Then I don't know, like towards the end, like Hoppy or Jupiter, more cerebral music. Like, as you said, it's quite cohesive. It sounds like they were hunkered down in the same house for months. It makes sense that it sounds this way.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Mecca was a standout for me. I really loved the drums and like the subtle bass line in that, just kind of like plodding along every once in a while. I really liked Happy. I thought Benji sounded really, really good singing on that. just his verse overall, I thought flowed so well with the song. It kind of had these like light keys and a chorus, almost sounded like something you might hear in like a church or something along those lines. So I thought that was pretty cool. I also liked, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, Ia Allah, which then in parentheses family. I just thought that was like a really, really well structured and put together song. And, overall, I just walked away from this feeling like, I don't know who exactly was like the head of it. It seems like Earth Gang seems to be like the visionaries in this, or like the ones at least kind of like driving the artistic vision to bring it together. And I thought it was a total success because to have this many people collaborating and jumping in and out and to make it still sound this good is really impressive. So definitely an album I want to listen back to. Again, we'll throw a couple on our Nowstalgia Best of 2020. Any last thoughts before we move on, though, Dave?
Yeah, even though it has similar origins, definitely sounds different than that Dreamville album. Right, that Dreamville album had a lot of good moments, but ultimately felt like what it was, which is a collection of songs.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to have a vision for that kind of stuff when there's that many people involved, and the totality of it's kind of the point. This obviously is much more pointed, specific, piece of artistic intent. So that's really cool. And
absolutely
unexpected release. I don't think really anyone knew this was really coming for a while. So that's cool. Always cool.
Good stuff. Also delivering some good stuff, I think. Action Bronson, who we've covered a couple times on here. I think the last time was White Bronco.
Yeah, 2 years back.
2 years ago, yeah. Which was, I think we were like, this is solid Action Bronson, but not doing anything too new. How did you feel about Only for Dolphins? This definitely feels a bit more expansive than most Bronson albums, I think.
Yeah, on one hand, it also feels quite familiar. This is Action doing a lot of his Action things, right? You know that Action Bronson rapping style. You know his flow. He's not really changing that up on this.
Right.
He'll go on these random non-sequiturs about obscure references and make, out there punchlines, and that's what he does, and he's always good at it. It doesn't always make sense, doesn't always have to make sense. That's what he does. He's funny. And I think Only for Dolphins, for me, though, stands out from White Bronco, and also his project Lamb Over Rice last year that we didn't talk about, where he seems really focused on this. And I think he did a lot more press for this album. He's lost a lot of weight. He seems to be really in a good headspace. And not he's reinventing the wheel, but like the production's really choice. And his production's usually good, but it seems really specific and intentional this time around. And yeah, the raps are always really tight on this. Again, it's another half-hour project from him, but he seems like he's in a good spot. This came out on Loma Vista Recordings, which is a indie label with major distribution. So it seems like he's found a home post being signed to Atlantic. Never really made sense as an Atlantic signing, I think. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't wowed by anything that much, but I also liked most of it, which is how I felt about him for a while now.
Yeah, I would agree that I think nothing on here super blew me away, but I really did like how this sounded more like an eclectic type album. Like a song like Latin Grammys certainly has.
That was good.
Yeah, that's probably the best song to me. And it has a little bit more of that like Latin flair as you might expect by the title. But then, a song like Vega, that sounds like a Greek song, I think intentionally so. And I just felt like kind of as he jumped around, he, like you said, he was a little bit more focused on wanting to bring in these different sounds, but it all still flowed together pretty well. Nothing felt like super out of place. And I just find his delivery, his style, like a breath of fresh air a lot of the time, especially as we're listening to so many different artists and up and coming young artists who take it so seriously, because this is, their opportunity to break into the business. They want to be these awesome artists who get these big deals. And Action is just so much himself, which is like this like goofy, ridiculous guy. He talked about going to the Irishman preview or premiere. Yes. And I thought that was a pretty funny moment. I mean, I started off the podcast talking about the chorus was that to Goldeneye or something like that, C12 maybe, I can't remember which one, but where he's like, I can't touch all these 10 toes, but I can still fuck these hoes. Like,
Yep.
just ridiculous
Classic line.
stuff, but you love to see it. I don't know. I another song that stood out to me was Shredder. Had this like noir feel to it, almost like a James Bond type song, and I was like, what other artist is kind of like jumping around like this and delivering these sorts of bars and this style? It's just I love that about him, is that he just feels so authentic. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's not too much to say because, like you said, it's still action, but I just really enjoyed this album. I think we'll probably throw one or two songs onto the list.
The start of Vega I really enjoyed. Crashed my shits and my cells straight through the window. The lead actor of my life story, Delroy Lindo. Topical reference. Love
that was a great line. Check out Only for Dolphins. He also, put a few dolphin calls in there. Dave, you want to give us your best dolphin call real quick?
No thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, is that the Deep from The Boys right now? I was like, I'm hearing dolphin noises. That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, Dave, we got to do it. We spared the folks this week because we had lined up Sufjan and Sylvan Esso and Fleet Foxes potentially. It was just going to be a whole half hour of Sad Boy review. We cut it down because
no one needs that.
Yeah, we don't want too many people crying while they listen to the podcast. It's not a good way to get the word out there about us. So instead, we're going to just talk about Fleet Foxes releasing their fourth album, Shore.
Surprise drop.
Yeah, surprise drop. Dropped on the autumnal equinox, which is so very Robin Peckinhole. I can't even describe how on brand that is. Follow up to 2017's Crack Up, which received a lot of great reviews. Dave, I've only listened to a couple Fleet Foxes before recently, and that I went through all the albums in order to make sure I was going into this with a clear head. I started smoking hand-rolled cigarettes. I started taking walks through the woods aimlessly.
Big American spirits guy right here.
Yeah, started wearing overalls. There was a lot of changes in my life listening to these albums. Man, Shore and Fleet Foxes in general, I really appreciate them for exactly what we just talked about with Spillage Village. When they make an album, it's incredibly cohesive. I think it flows together so well, and I almost struggle to pick certain songs from the albums because I usually just feel like they kind of flow together as a whole. I thought that continued on Shore. This felt like a lot more optimistic of an album compared to Crack Up, especially. A lot warmer than most Fleet Foxes are, but the thing is, it's really deep folk. Like, this is folk rock to the extreme. And if you like I know you aren't, Dave, a fan of folk rock or into that real indie scene, it's going to be tough to get through. How did you feel listening to it, though?
I didn't dislike it. I thought it was fine. And that's because it ultimately just reminded me of elevator music.
Wow, really?
I could totally hear. Yeah, because to me, this actually sounded really samey. It's like I had a hard time really locking in on a song because they all remind me of the same vibe for the most part. And there's some exceptions, but yeah, it's kind of that light, inoffensive folk music. And even if it has some, more pointed lyrics, the instrumentation is in such a way that it's kind of just easygoing, I guess you could say. So yeah, I didn't really mind it, but I also don't have a lot of exposure to Fleet Fox. I really just knew about them as the band that used to have Father John Misty in them.
Yeah, and I think if you're a casual, listener or not really into that scene, that makes sense because Father John Misty's probably gotten a lot more commercial attention than Fleet Foxes. The thing is, every album that they've made, I think is structurally, sonically, lyric-wise excellent. And that continues on Shore. I think this is really quality songwriting and craftsmanship. But I agree with you. I think a lot of the songs do just kind of run together. I think it can sound very samey at a lot of points. But I did find myself really enjoying again like the more warm sound on this. You do have a couple of songs that are a little bit sadder, a little bit colder. Songs like the title track "Shore," songs like for I can't read my own handwriting here. That's not good.
For a week or
for
two.
a week or two, yes. But then you have songs like "Sunblind," which I think is really good. "Can I Believe You" had that almost like sun-drenched folk sound to it. Wading in waist-high water, which I believe is the intro track.
Yeah.
Sounds very triumphant, starts out cold and kind of comes through it triumphantly. There was a couple songs where like horns kind of came in and made this sound very, I don't know, just like a little bit more upbeat. And I really appreciate that because I think one of the knocks for me with Fleet Foxes is they're usually talking about depression, anxieties about the world, and it can sound a bit heavy. So having a little bit lighter of a tone on this was welcome. Any songs stand out to you? Anything that you actually liked?
I liked Young Man's Game and Quiet Air / Gioia. Those ones made my ears perk a little bit. But yeah, I didn't really dislike anything. I just didn't lock in too much either.
Yeah.
Easy to listen to.
Fair enough. Fleet Foxes, a band that I think well regarded, but not well listened to. So if you haven't checked them out, give them a listen to see what you think and drop us a comment below. But let's jump into some things we watched this week, Dave. Let's start with some TV. We're going to talk about Fargo, Season 4. Noah Hawley, back, dog, FX, and FX on Hulu, dropping 2 episodes Sunday night, the 27th. This is a pretty stacked cast. You have Chris Rock, Jesse Buckley, who we just saw, and I'm thinking of ending things in Chernobyl, Jason Schwartzman. Who else in this?
Ben Whishaw.
Yep.
Jack Houston, Timothy Oliphant.
Yep.
Legion alums, Jeremy Harris and Amber Midthunder. Good cast, like most of
wasn't Danny
Hawley's
Glover
work for
in this
FX.
too? Isn't he Dr. Senator?
Who's that?
Is that not Danny Glover who plays Dr. Senator?
It is not him, although he probably would have been excellent in that role.
that guy looked just like him to me. I guess I was.
That is Glenn Turman.
He was awesome. I thought he was great in the second episode, but
not a doctor or senator. But I have to have a PhD.
Yeah, in economics, actually. Yeah, so season 4 dropped last night. Dave, how you feel about these 2 episodes? Are you back on board with Fargo?
Yeah, I was never not on board. It's just we've had 3.5 years now since Fargo season 3, nearly that. And Fargo season 3 was notable not because it was bad; it was still good. It just wasn't anywhere really near as good as Fargo season 2, which was one of the best seasons of TV of the last decade. Yep. So, inevitably, it's a tough come down, but I still liked it. But you could start to see perhaps the formula to Fargo a little bit, right? You have shady characters, unclear motivations on all sides, juxtaposed with the banality and simplicity of life in the Midwest, right? Yeah. It's kind of a similar structure and setup in Fargo, right? And season 1 and especially season 2 really, really nail that, in awesome ways. And you have, and Fargo in general, the whole enterprise was a kind of genius way to make an IP out of something that no one expected. And Noah Hawley's pitch for Fargo is kind of famous for getting him the ability to actually make the show, right? And having him come back for season 4, and not only that, but have to go through a lot to get this season ready. This was supposed to come out in April, but due to COVID, they had to delay because those last 2 episodes were not shot. Obviously there was no shooting for such time, so they missed the Emmy cutoff as a result. Everyone's plans are delayed and pushed back. We all know the story at this point, but it's finally here, right? FX on Hulu. Noah Hawley back, Chris Rock. most notable dramatic role from him in who the fuck knows how long. Like, and he said in the press leading up to this that he's been waiting for that role to jump out to him. So I was not like wowed by Rock in the first episodes, but he's still kind of convincing, and you know, I think well chosen as Loy Cannon, one of our shady characters as we expect from Fargo. So yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm definitely into. I think what I was most struck by was the first episode, right? And I think both episodes have great moments, but I really liked like the table setting in that first episode, how they showed
20 minutes.
Yeah, that opening 20 minutes of the Jewish family that or Jewish mob family that had control of Kansas City, and then how the Irish came in and how they made deals and they swapped sons, and then they double crossed. Yep, then the Italians came in, same thing. And then I think it actually, a moment that sets the tone for Rock's character is when they usually spit in the hand, do the handshake, and he's so like, nah, we do this like men. He cuts the hand and he puts it out, and I was like, ooh, okay, this, you're not seeing this character as like a badass yet, but you're kind of seeing like he doesn't fuck around, which I thought was a really cool moment.
I think that moment has amazing meme potential too.
Oh yeah,
you know, I think as men, we should do this like men. It reminds me of when friends of ours try and raise the buy-ins in our fantasy leagues.
Wow, shots.
I thought that was really notable. Like you said, the table setting, a long, understated, because it takes so long, 25-minute almost prologue before you get the title card drop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely intentional. And of course, once you get that title card, it says this is a true story for the sake of all those involved, and the names have been changed. That obvious Fargo wink, you love that. I also really liked in episode 1 where you have that scene where Rock and Senator are trying to get their credit card enterprise going because they need buy-in from the whites to make it mass scale, right? And at the end, the guy at the bank they're talking to is like, that's just not what banking's about on the topic of swindling and taking advantage of people's misfortune. It's like, wow, that is pointed and obvious, but you still kind of love to hear it. I've seen some mixed reception to a lot of the kind of heavy-handed comments and worldview being discussed in the first episode, namely like what makes an American and who decides that and stuff, right? And like, in a sense, it's coming at a timely moment to have that kind of thing be proposed. But I think the dialogue, at least in the beginning, was a little pointed. So I'm curious to see exactly how far that kind of stuff goes, because the way they were setting up, right, at the time, right, Italians were just as disregarded as other minorities, right? And that's kind of the premise we're getting here. So we'll see what happens with that. But I don't need Fargo to kind of have loftier ambitions. I don't care if Fargo sticks to what it does, because what it does is, to this point, good, but more importantly, it's always really watchable and compelling. So, I don't need Fargo season 4 to truly be anything that new to still be into it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, Fargo and Noah Hawley have my season pass, so to speak. Whenever it's on, I'm going to watch it, just because after you make a season like season 2, and season 3 and season 1 both being good episodes or good series of TV, seasons of TV, even if 3 was a little bit less than 1, you just know that there's going to be at least moments, if not a cohesive product that's fantastic. And you see all the table setting in these. I'm really interested in Jessie Buckley's character and the role she's going to play, because she's just sewing. This homicidal nurse who's just doing drugs with the Fada family, Jason Schwartzman. Yeah, in the drug closet. She's obviously pretty cunning, able to kind of wiggle her way out of more serious trouble when she gets fired from her job. She baked that pie. Interested to see what happens with that. She just seems like she's just sowing this insanity, and I want to know what her angle is and why she's doing it. Like, it's very interesting, and that's always the impressive thing that Hawley does, and that I think filmmakers like Gilligan and David Simon do really well is they always have these multiple things going on that are going to tie and weave together so well, but you can also watch them individually and just be fascinated by those storylines. So really interested to see how this all comes together. Also, just interested by this whole swapping kids to sow trust idea.
Young Greyjoy in this bitch.
Yeah, it seems like a fairly obvious way to create quick conflict within these two families as they're kind of moving forward, raise the stakes a bit. But I'm just interested to see where all that goes. So, and the kids being such a vital part of the double crosses. So check out Fargo. Any last thoughts before we move on?
Cool to see Schwartzman do something outside of Wes Anderson, more serious role, not the most common thing from him. So I'm with it.
I want to see the Wes Anderson season of Fargo. Just want to see what it would be like.
That'd be something. That would look amazing.
It would look amazing. I don't know how interesting it'd be, but look amazing. Why don't we move on and wrap up with Enola Holmes? Dave, Enola Holmes dropped on Netflix.
Top 10, number 1. You don't say. Like anything on Netflix.
Starring Millie Bobby Brown. Probably the second or third role she's had post Stranger Things. She's in Godzilla.
It's her first lead role.
First lead role.
Yeah. And that's notable. That's very notable.
Especially for someone who has the clout she has at such a young age.
Such a breakout. Only now, 16 years old. It's just the beginning for her.
It's directed by an inexperienced director in terms of film, Harry Bradbeer, who is done some work for Fleabag and Killing Eve, but getting his real first chance here to do the big screen. And you got a couple of big name people alongside her. You got Henry Cavill playing Sherlock. You have Helena Bonham Carter playing the mother. It's. Go ahead. I don't really know where we're going.
It's interesting to get Henry Bradbeer as the director because there's some fourth wall breaking in Enola Holmes, and of course, fourth wall breaking was the central framing device for Fleabag, right? So in a sense, it's a good choice, I guess, right? Because at the end of the day, I think Enola Holmes, by design, is a more juvenile film, probably designed for kids and fans of Millie Bobby Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I still think it's pretty good for what it's trying to do. It's story's kind of whatever, and it's not the most unpredictable thing I've ever seen. But Millie Bobby Brown's a really talented, charismatic person, and it's great to see her have more charisma than, say, 11 does in Stranger Things. So, that's kind of all it takes for me sometimes.
No, I agree. And, this is based off a young adult book series by Nancy Springer. So it makes sense that it's a little bit more juvenile, a little bit more for the young adult age range. But I think that this is a fairly interesting and fun film, even though it is maybe for a younger audience. I thought, like you said, Millie Bobby Brown was really engaging. I liked all the scenes with her and Helena Bonham Carter. I didn't really like Louis Partridge, who played Tewksbury. I thought he was a bit flat, and
she's just kind of taking his lunch money when they're in scenes together. She's a much more talented actor.
Yeah, she's just and so charismatic, and he just is a bit dry in that area, I'd say. But I thought all the action scenes were pretty fun, and even beyond that, I think some of the larger messaging, right? Like there's the scenes with the woman who taught her how to fight, and she has that really pointed line with Sherlock when she's like, you're comfortable like not speaking up because you're in a system that works for you instead of against you. Like I was like, oh, that's very pointed, makes a lot of sense. I think a great message to be kind of talking about here. I do think this movie was a little long. Like I think it could have been chopped down a little bit, maybe an hour 50. I mean, it went to I think like 205, 210. I was like, all right, this is a little bit long. I didn't need the whole like 30-minute ending prologue where she sees her mom and Sherlock decides to, make her his child or whatever it is.
His ward.
His ward, yes. But overall, I still thought it was pretty fun.
Yeah. What'd you think of Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes, notably busting at the seams in his shirts because he's so fucking jacked after Witcher and Superman and Fallout, right? Like, kind of a stark visual for Holmes, but I would have liked more personally of Cavill. Like, he's barely in the movie, honestly. He only has a few scenes, just talking scenes, right? And he's just kind of like propelling Enola forward for the most part in the movie. But it's an interesting portrayal of Sherlock. There's lots of them, of course. But what do you think?
I thought he was all right. I mean, when I think about Sherlock Holmes, I think about jacked dude who probably just like lifted beer kegs above his head, was doing squats, I don't know. It was definitely nice to see Cavill doing something that wasn't just being like a meat muscle action person. But I think it's hard to even really qualify because, like you said, other than a couple moments where he like figured things out and laid things out, and that's always one of the best parts about Sherlock Holmes. I didn't really get a chance to really even see what he could do in the role.
Yeah. I mean, we know Cavill can do like debonair. He did that in The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yep.
That's a lot of reasons why people think he would be a good Bond. But like, he's just not given enough to do to really show anything off in Enola Holmes. Conversely, Minecraft, the other brother, is played by Sam Claflin, and like that's such a one-note like villain role and light villain. I don't know, just like he's obviously just a dipshit, like misogynistic and all like of the times and all that. Like he was just really one-note and frustrating. I wish, if this movie wasn't for kids, you would have gotten more teased or shown about his relationship with Fiona Shaw's character, which definitely was a source of humor when it was briefly touched on.
I actually wish we got a little bit more of Fiona Shaw's character a bit here, right? Because she comes in, obviously fairly wealthy, and again, is kind of just like this character put in place to provide Enola with a car so she can get to the next part of her adventure in a lot of ways, and like a small boss, if you will, in terms of her overall like video game type story. But Fiona Shaw is just so I don't know, like she plays cold so well, and she was a little bit warmer in this role while still also being menacing and obviously a antagonist. And I just feel like there was just so much more she could have done, because it felt like maybe she could have turned or like aided Enola in some way, but instead it's just she's Minecraft's wannabe lover and kind of just like a dipshit as well. So it's a bit one note, I think, also for her when you have these talented people who can do so much more. What did you think about Helena Bonham Carter? Usually we see her playing these dark, kind of like twisted roles in a lot of senses, and this is different.
Still eccentric. I would have liked more. I actually thought it was pretty good. She's actually in a good spot right now, I think, with coming off The Crown. But could have used more. She's barely in it as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there'll be more with her in the next one, or if she's always going to kind of be that.
It's definitely left open to sequels. And, Millie actually is also a producer on this. She's invested in this franchise. It's a Enola Holmes series. So having a sequel like this would not surprise me at all. And there's I think 5 or 6 of those Enola Holmes novels. So there's more material to adapt and work with. So I think the sequel is honestly pretty likely.
Certain. Yeah.
And you think Cavill and Carter perhaps could be optioned to come back, but who knows? I mean, what do you think about the fourth wall breaking? That's kind of an important structure choice. She's both talking to the audience at times as like a narrator, and then there's also moments where she looks at the camera in the middle of the action. I thought one of those moments actually was pretty good when she winks when she's underwater.
Yep.
Around. Other moments, though, it just kind of felt like lazy script to me a little bit when she's narrating. But I mean, it's more moments for Millie to just talk and kind of
Yeah.
cook. So I can't complain too much because I just like listening to her speak. She's really, really, really compelling person.
Yeah, the fourth wall breaking I thought was effective. A little overdone, but if you do it right, kind of like with Fleabag or even in this, just adds so much to like the character. You get a better sense of the character, and if anything else, and I think kind of what anyone that's listening to this review is taking away is this movie is just a showcase for Millie Bobby Brown, pretty much.
Yeah.
And if all this is doing is letting her, kind of build her star, be more charismatic, show she has this range or this ability to play this kind of character, especially because 11 is fairly muted in Stranger Things by the lack of understanding of the world in general and the fear that comes
He's also
along.
barely in Godzilla for what it's worth.
So this, if nothing else, this is a showcase for her. And if that fourth wall breaking allows more time for her to cook, so be it. I'm fine with that. I think overall, I would consider this a success for Millie Bobby Brown, for Netflix. I think it's definitely gotten a lot more love than a lot of Netflix drops have, at least from what I'm seeing on Twitter. A lot of people watching it, commenting on it. So it's an easy watch and it's fun. A little long, but fun.
Yeah, for sure. One last note, I would say that Partridge, that actor, looks like the cross between Dean Charles Chapman and one of the Sprouts twins. I kept looking at him and I'm like, you just have an uncanny resemblance to some recent male celebrities. Unfortunately, the acting ability did not follow.
Yeah, unfortunately, better days ahead for Lewis Partridge, hopefully. So we'll wrap up there, Dave. What do we got for next week?
So next week, we don't have a whole lot right now, but we do have a new album from YG, as well as most notably, debut album from Blackpink, K-pop supergroup. So
Blackpink.
Yes, in your area. They're coming in your area this Friday. Very exciting.
I'm in your area. I'm in your area.
That's them collabing with MGK.
Let's hope. All right, guys. We're going to wrap up there. Check us out at Nowstalgia Pod on Twitter, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, and youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Give us that 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Also, make a plan to vote if you don't have one yet. Early voting has started some places. Know where you can go, know how to do your mail-in ballots, but you got to vote, people. Do it. We'll see you next week.